A gem mint grade for a Golden Age book. If I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. And this lone Golden Age 10.0 would make your dentist proud. More on that later. Hi, I'm Keston, and in this video, we'll explore the coveted 9.9s and 10.0s. A 9.8 is what many collectors shoot for when submitting a book to CGC. Generally speaking, it's the highest grade one can hope for, a book that's close to perfection. But there are two higher grades rarely bestowed on any book from any period, a 9.9 and a 10.0. Let's start out with what distinguishes 9.9s and 10s from 9.8s. And let me tell you, it ain't much. So at 9.8, it's a nearly perfect collectible with negligible handling or manufacturing defects. At 9.9, the collectible is nearly indistinguishable from a 10.0, but will have a very minor manufacturing defect. It will not have any evidence of handling defects. And then finally, when we get to a 10, the highest grade assigned, the collectible must have no evidence of any manufacturing or handling defects. I have a hard time distinguishing between these nosebleed grades. We're talking about the smallest of flaws visible to the eye, and you really have to know what to look for. And the difference between a 9.9 and a 9.8 is that 9.9 can only be a manufacturing defect, so no handling defects can be there at all. In a 10, you just can't find a defect, period. I've heard many collectors say, shoot for a 9.8. If you get higher, consider it a blessing. How rare are 9.9s and 10s? For a quick and dirty investigation, let's take a look at eBay. We'll start with a 9.8 and then work our way up. Here we go, CGC 9.8. There are over 100,000 results for that particular search. Now, given this is going to pop up a lot of things that aren't actually 9.8s or not CGC, but it gives you a loose estimate of how common it is. And by the way, doing this search, the 9.8s, the vast majority of books that you're going to see are going to be modern age books. And that's going to continue with 9.9s and 10s. All right, let's move to 9.9 and see what we get. Yeah, it drastically goes down from over 100,000 results to only 848. And as you can see, there are not that many books there, and they are, again, almost all modern books. Now, finally, let's go to a 10. And what do we get? We get merely 44 results. And some of these aren't actually 10s. But here's one. Here's another one. And these are just so rare. But let's get a little bit more clinical, a little bit more exact. So I want to take a look at a few very well-known modern age books so you can get a sense of the distribution between a 9.8, a 9.9, and a 10. Let's start with a popular book, Ultimate Fallout 4, which is the first appearance of Miles Morales. We go on here and we look to see what the census is at different grades. And you can see that there are a ton of 9.8s. There are 3,249. But if you go up to mint, a 9.9, 0, a 10 is 0. So even popular modern books, it's hard to find a 9.9 or 10. Let's look at a couple others just for contrast. Next up is X-Men #1. This is not the original series that came out in 1963, but a later one that came out in 1991. It was extremely popular. Millions and millions of copies were sold. And here are a few of the books that hit the CGC census. So you can see that there are 5,934 of these books that hit a 9.8. But in terms of mint, only 11. And 10s, there are 0. So again, we have absolutely no 10s with these ultra popular modern books. Now we turn our attention to Spawn #1. This is a popular book back in 1992. And you can see for the first time, we actually have a 10. In fact, there are 6 copies of 10s for Spawn #1. There are 76 copies of 9.9s or mints, and there are over 11,000 9.8s. All 3 of these books came out in a time when many collectors were speculating on comic books. They often would take the first book they saw, put it in a bag and a board, and preserved it to keep it in as pristine of condition as possible. Let's contrast this with the Golden Age books. These were books that came out in the late 30s through the early 1950s. At the time, few, if any, people were speculating on comic books. They were things that kids read with reckless abandon, and parents considered them to be disposable. They would throw out the comic books during spring cleaning. So in general, it's hard to find Golden Age books, and it's really hard to find these books in high grade. Let's take a look at CGC census for some well-known Golden Age books, just to contrast how rare they are, A, and then B, how hard it is to find high-grade books. First of all, there are only 165 copies of this book on the census. And then if you go up, you can see that there are 3 8.5s, a 9, and a 9.6. But don't get too excited. The 9.6 and the 9 are both restored copies of the book. The highest grade unrestored copy is an 8.5. My goodness, it is so hard to find these books in high grade. Let's take a look at another book. All right, here we go. This is All-Star Comics number 8. It is the first appearance of Wonder Woman. It came out in December 1941, January 1942. And again, this book is tough to find. There are only 189 copies on census. We can see that, okay, we have some higher grades here. We've got a 9.0. 5 of those, 2 are unrestored. We have a single 9.4 that is also unrestored, but nothing higher. No 9.6s, no 9.8s, 9.9s, or 10s. So finding a 9.8 in the Golden Age for any series is tough. The only 9.8 that I know of that is for a major key is in Captain America Comics number 1. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so here we go with Captain America Comics number 1. Pretty hard book to find as well. A total of 181 copies on census. And if we go up, we can see that there are some pretty high grades. On these unrestored universal copies, we have 1 9.0, 2 9.2s, 2 9.4s, and a single 9.8. Cap, congratulations on having a 9.8 copy. That distinguishes you from all the other major keys. Do you have anything that you would like to share? If you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing so. In 9.9s, I've only seen a couple go up for auction in the last 10 years that I've been collecting. The most famous of which is Shock Suspense Stories number 6, which sold a few years ago at Heritage. Nevertheless, I was able to go on the CGC forums and find a discussion on the topic, and somebody in 2017 had found that there were 19 Golden Age books that received a 9.9 on the census. Now, this is 19 books across all titles of the Golden Age, so it shows you how rare they are. So I was shocked, absolutely floored, when I found out that there was a 10.0 in the Golden Age. So what is it? It's Kynos Presents the White Guard number 1. It was a comic book produced by the company Kynos. This was a popular toothpaste brand back in the early 20th century. It was later acquired by Colgate Palmolive in 1995. Not exactly a key book by any means. Regardless, if you want a Golden Age book that's a 10.0, as far as I know, this single comic book is your only option. And good luck getting hold of it. I do not know who owns it, and I haven't seen it up for auction. So you might be waiting quite a while to get a chance to get your Kynos Presents the White Guard number 1. And by the way, if you're interested in learning more about high-grade Golden Age books, check out this video on comic book pedigrees, and there are some amazing stories about the best collections ever discovered. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and hope to see you around real soon.